Welcome to TwoQuestions.tv. My guest today is Kathy Palokoff, and we're talking about Firestarters. Welcome to TwoQuestions.tv. I'm Susan baroncini-moe. My guest today is Kathy Palokoff, a serial entrepreneur, author, and educator with businesses ranging from a creative agency to an award-winning pizza restaurant. Yum! She's passionate about helping people ignite, fuel, and accelerate their dreams, which is the focus of this book, Firestarters, How Innovators, Instigators, and Initiators Can Inspire You to Ignite Your Own Life. Hi, Kathy. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's really nice to be here.
Well, I thought your book was awesome and really spoke to my heart. One thing we should clarify right off the bat, by Firestarters, you don't necessarily mean just entrepreneurs or business owners. So could you, for the audience members who haven't yet read your book and who are waiting for their copy to arrive, could you explain what is a Firestarter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me tell you how it originated. I was always trying to figure out who I was. And one day, one of a person I really respect, an executive coach, said, "Oh, Kathy, you're a fire starter." And I went, "Huh?"
Don't you love those moments?
Yeah, that's an aha moment. And then I wanted to figure out what it was. And what I've always felt was that we've put a lot of focus on entrepreneurs, and business, but there are fire starters everywhere in nonprofits. I think a mom who changes the school system for their kids is a fire starter. I think somebody who's passionate about a cause is a fire starter. And then I think there's business. So it was bigger than entrepreneurs. It encompasses entrepreneurs. I meet musicians and artists all the time who are fire starters.
Absolutely.
Passion, and they just move with it. So the definition of a fire starter is really somebody who makes magic happen, who takes it beyond, for example, there are people who join a cause. There are people who start a movement. We're talking about the people who start the movement. There are people who work in an organization, and then there are people within that organization who make that organization change or go out and start businesses. There's a difference, and it's magical. And you know what? You know them when you meet them.
Yeah. Well, and there are different kinds.
Absolutely. So, we found 3 different kinds. One was Innovators. I think everybody knows those. They create.
I'm accepting it.
Innovator. Then there are Instigators, and those are people who are the disruptors. Okay, they sort of want things to change. And then there's another group that's interesting. It's called Initiators, and those are people who begin things. I, by the way, am an.
Oh no, that's me. That's me. I forgot. Yes, that's me.
Okay, but the point you're making actually is important, because you can have all 3 of those inside of you, but one primarily sort of comes out a bit. And what was interesting, I have 2 co-authors, and Raul Davis, he is definitely an innovator, and Paul Eder is an instigator, and I happen to be an initiator. So what happened was the dynamics of writing this book were really interesting.
I bet.
We argued a lot, but we laughed a lot too.
I bet. That's so interesting. I think that's really interesting. I am an initiator. I do love starting things. There's something, and I think that's a trait a lot of entrepreneurs for sure have. I mean, especially the serial entrepreneur. We like starting things because there's that period in the starting of a business, in the startup, when it's so exciting and things are happening and all these decisions are made and it's electric. And then you got to maintain it and grow it.
Right.
That's not fun. Who wants to do that, right? Like, I'd rather just pass that off to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So, I'm sure there are people who find that part exciting, right?
Well, I think what we found, in addition to these sort of types, is there's a framework we have in the book, and we looked at 3 things. One were those igniters. So what sort of ignites you? Another is what fuels you. So what sort of keeps that thing going. And the final thing was accelerants. So what are things that accelerate that growth? And to have anything happen and to make it bigger than it is, you have to have all those things going on. And they're usually a combination of personality type, but also the situation and the environment. So Paul, who is a really brilliant organizational development person with a psychology background, just did a ton of research with us. And he sort of looked at different factors and helped us frame this. And the other group that really framed this were all these fire starters we talked to, and they're in the book too. Did you enjoy those stories?
Yes, because I saw myself in them. I think that's relevant. You know, like that's the thing that makes a book come alive for me, is when you see yourself in the stories and they kind of illustrate, obviously, the narrative. And the other thing is that there are so many books, I'm sure you've seen, there are so many books out there now that are theory, but this is practice. This is actually real. It's not just a theory. And so I think that's great. The other thing I thought that was great about the book was the conversation about extinguishers, because I think that that's so relevant to so many. I see so many people who get excited about something. They try to start something and they don't, and they fail or they stop. Could you talk a little bit about how do extinguishers function, and how do we avoid letting them get in our way, putting out the fire?
Well, you know, I like the way you worded that question, because extinguishers are always there. You know, you can't make them not happen, but how you plan for them is really the key. So what we found with the fire starters who we researched and talked about is they had a plan on how to get around an extinguisher. So an extinguisher can be things that we think about a lot, like money. You know, so many people say, I have lack of funds, that's the extinguishers. A true fire starter gets around it. They figure out some strategies that are going to get them around there. So a lot of extinguishers aren't only what happens on the outside, it's really the inside. So an extinguisher you could have is a fear of failure. So
brain junk.
To a point, it's like, oh, I know I'm going to fail. So this inner thing's going on in your brain, and it's not real. You know, it's only your brain talking. So the way to really get around extinguishers is to have a plan, but also to surround yourself with supporters. And that was another key aspect of the book that we found out, was that there are people and different kinds of supporters. So you want supporters who are nurturers, but you also want supporters who are going to challenge you, right? You know, if everybody's a yes person, they're not a supporter. And then you need strategies to keep extinguishers out of your life. Now, I personally kept extinguishers out of my life by becoming an entrepreneur. Okay, so I was I worked for large corporations, and I wasn't all that good at not letting the organization affect myself on that. So I found out, as a leader, a CEO of my own company, I'd like that control. Now, by the way, I have a whole set of other extinguishers, like time, money, you know, all those kind of things. But I knew I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. What's interesting, though, is there are fire starters in large organizations. And the
intrapreneur.
Absolutely. And they do that, but they're generally pretty savvy about, you know, who they're going to not take their fire out, you know, so.
Interesting. I have always admired those who can be the entrepreneur. I never could in my corporate career. It just did not work for me. Right. I think because I was a little too greedy. I want to prosper from my own ideas, and I didn't want to just give them to a big, on the one hand, it's so great because big companies have the resources and the infrastructure that you might need for a big idea. But I liked doing it myself. So.
And what happens though is a fire starter who needs to scale up, once you move to that accelerator thing, that trait of wanting to hold on and keep it yourself often keeps businesses and nonprofits smaller.
Yes.
Because they can't take it to that next level. So we hear so often of founders of companies where, you know, they flounder when they need to go up to the next level on there.
You definitely have to know when to let it go. Yeah. And you can sink your business if you can't let it go. Absolutely. But it's still yours, and you didn't give it to some, you know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't give it to an employer, you know?
Yep, absolutely.
Showing my bias. Okay. Well, Kathy, thank you for joining me on the show today. We want to stick around for an after show?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Awesome. All right. Okay, then. Viewers, here's the book. Now, we're going to have links down below in the show notes. Podcast listeners, they're going to be in your show notes too. So you can get your copy if you haven't already ordered it. And if you'd like to join Kathy and me in the after show, you'll find it at our website, twoquestions.tv. So we'll see you over there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.